Welcome to You, Me in the Counselling World, the podcast dedicated to student counsellors and their road to getting qualified and beyond. Today it's episode 12 and I'm joined by the lovely Sarah Reddan. Together we talk all things fear, comfort zone and how to not let fear hold you back in your studies. If you listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts and would like to leave me a review, please do. Hello Sarah. Oh, it's really lovely to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me on to be your guest.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for taking the time to be with me. I'm so happy. And of course, you and I have never met before, so this feels really cool to just be able to chat and actually see you on the camera as well, although the people at home won't be able to see us. At least I can see you.
Yeah, and it does help sort of that having that conversation and being able to see you. But I think it'll be fine for people listening just to be able to hear what we have to talk about today.
Well, hopefully, I think it feels really good, and I hope you've had a good week. Have things been okay for you?
Yeah, really good. Been a busy week. I've been launching a new project, so it's lots of work going on with that. But yeah, really good. And yourself?
Yeah, I've been good, thank you. I've been busy with clients and supervisees this week, but I'm all right. I'm enjoying life. So what is this project that you speak of? Can we hear more about this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm beta testing a course which is Reframe Your Relationship with Food. It's an online self-directed resource that I'm making available. And it's all about body positivity, food neutrality. It's specifically designed for women that are ready to ditch the yo-yo diets and learn to love who they are when they look in the mirror, no matter what shape or size they are.
Wow, do you know, that sounds absolutely amazing. And there's so much call for it, isn't there? And it sounds like you've created something that's really quite unique in allowing people to just be who they are. That's what sounds like you're saying.
Yeah, because that for me is what it's all about. I was because I do hypnotherapy and the coaching, I was having clients come to me and ask about weight loss. And with my own philosophies around kind of body positivity and the food neutrality, I was slightly uncomfortable with it. It's something that over the last few years I've actively avoided doing. And I work with a coach, and I had a realization that I could actually do what I was being asked to do by clients, but also in a way that felt aligned and authentic with my own beliefs. And really, I think it's time that we kind of let go of that societal expectation that we can only be a certain shape or size, and that's what beauty is. For me, beauty is so much more. Health is so much more. So being able to understand why we make food choices that we make, it's so important. So rather than depriving ourselves, for me, the course is about coming from a perspective of nourishment, not punishment.
Love that. That will really stick, I'm sure. That's a really great way of putting it.
Thank you. And I'm so far I'm getting really good feedback with my beta test group, and it's something I'm just so excited about because I think part of my journey at the moment is that, what is it? What is it to have health? What is it to be healthy? What is it to nourish your body? And for me, it's always much easier for me to stay focused on my goals if I'm working alongside coaching clients to achieve that as well.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic, doesn't it? And as you say, sometimes with the work that we do, we can have that. The rewards come through working with people, but sometimes it really hits something for us personally, doesn't it? And it really, I think it gives us a real energy boost sometimes to be feeding off of the people that we're working with in that way.
Yeah. I recently had a conversation with a wonderful lady called Amanda. She's also a therapist, and she said about how we have vibrational energy and we attract people on the same vibrational kind of space. And that really resonated for me because that's where I am at the moment with my journey, with my body and my health. And having these women contact me to say, hey, can we work with this? It's like, yeah, actually, it sort of all came together at exactly the right time for where I was in my practice and where I was in my personal life, for me to be able to go, yeah, I can do this, and I've got these skills and this knowledge that I can pass on. And I'm also only a few steps ahead, so I can remember the journey.
Yeah, which is really helpful in itself. And do you know what, when you're talking then, it reminded me of something in that when you and I first made contact with each other, because for those listening, Sarah has an amazing podcast called Conversations with Sarah. And if I absolutely love your podcast. I think it's amazing. But when you and I made contact with each other, I think we both said that somehow we ended up contacting each other via a forum we were on, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we hadn't met each other, but we both were in this place where we wanted to create this podcast and we were thinking about ideas. And I think we just reached out to each other. And I think we both said that we don't normally do that, but we were sort of drawn. And I think it reminds me of what you were saying then about the energy.
Yeah. And I think that's been my experience with my podcast. Quite a few of my guests, we've just kind of stumbled across each other in spaces that we wouldn't ordinarily be in or that we wouldn't ordinarily comment in, and it's just been this amazing connection, and I'm building this amazing network of mostly women wellbeing practitioners who are really out there in the world, like making a difference for people. It's for me, it's been such an amazing experience, and to be able to bring that out in the podcast and come on and talk with people like yourself and about what you're doing and share what I'm doing. It's amazing. Like all these people just wanting to make a difference and help people kind of live a healthier, happier life. And of course for you, yours is very specifically for people on their journey to become a counsellor. And I think that's why I reached out to you, because it's like, yeah, like there was bits of my journey that were quite difficult, and there's things that I wanted to do that I felt that I couldn't do, and there's things that I'm doing now that I wouldn't have done then. And I thought, yeah, why not reach out and kind of see if there was a connection there.
We've only just been chatting a bit this morning before we started recording, haven't we? But I think we probably could have talked for another hour, just us two, before we even begun. One thing that I think I wanted to kind of talk to you about in that is when we were talking about you being a guest, I was really aware of, for you, it was really quite scary to think about doing that. And you were like, oh, it terrifies me to think about doing it. And I know that you won't mind me sharing this because we've already chatted a little bit about it. But that was kind of the basis for the subject of this podcast, around fear and around how sometimes fear can hold us back. It sounds like for you, you've really been fighting against that to really put yourself out there and push your comfort zone. And is that right? Is that what's been happening?
Absolutely, exactly what has been happening. So I've been really lucky that this is now my third guest appearance on a podcast. But I think you were the first person that I spoke with about guesting. And yes, absolutely. The idea of coming on to a podcast as a guest, is terrifying. Everything is completely out of my control. I didn't know how to prep. I didn't know what I was going to say. For me, one of the things that I'm aware that I worry about is what will I say? Because I don't do a lot of preparation. I like to just come on and have quite an organic conversation. That's how my podcast works, and that's kind of what I like to do, just throw myself in and see what's going to happen. But what comes with that is that unknown. And am I going to say something ridiculous? Am I going to not have something to say? And all of that comes into it. Will people judge me? Am I going to do myself a disservice as a professional? All of those things come into play, and I recognize that those little mind monkeys happen, but I hear them and I don't listen. So as I would have said to you, yes, I would come and be your guest. The idea terrifies me, but absolutely sign me up, I'll be there.
Yes, and so that's the ultimate, isn't it? The ultimate in being able to push yourself out of that comfort zone and say, regardless of the fear that I'm experiencing, I'm going to go and do this. And I really admire you for that, because it's not easy, is it? It's not easy to really push ourselves in that way. And I think we've all dealt with fear at times in our life. And I know that I have in my career and, and in life generally. Fear is there and it really holds people, I think, in that sense. And
I completely agree. I think for me, it almost is, I go, well, what is the worst that can happen? What is the absolute worst that can happen? The absolute worst that can happen for me, or that I imagine, is I will say something stupid. And you know what? I'm a human being. We all say stupid things at times, or we say things that perhaps I might say something that I don't mean exactly how it comes across. I get very excited when I'm speaking, and at times my brain and my mouth move at slightly different speeds. I'm sure many people listening will experience that.
Oh, completely relate to that, yes.
Yeah, and of course, in general conversation, you can clarify what you're talking about. In a podcast situation, there isn't always time. You don't realise that you've done it because you're caught up in the adrenaline of what's going on until you hear it back, and it's like, oh, that really wasn't what I meant. And actually, the first show that I went on a friend's radio show, and I used the wrong word. I said, I'm not going to be able to remember now. I said, something was overutilized rather than underutilized, which completely changed the meaning of the sentence that I was saying. So I've already done the thing that I was afraid of, and the world did not end.
Ah, okay. So that's the learning for you, isn't it? That actually the thing that I fear the most, the thing that's the most scary I can think of, has happened, and it was all right. What's that like to think of it in that way?
Well, I think that's the reality for most people. Even though we're afraid of all of these what ifs, even if the what if happens, we usually survive it.
And that's it. And I think that comes back to something about trusting in ourselves as well, trusting in our ability to cope. And I talk to clients a lot about that, about trusting in your ability to cope in situations. And so many of us underestimate our ability to cope. And I don't know whether that helps to look at it like that, if that resonates with you in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. It's like, especially when you're putting yourself out into the world, onto the internet, there are horrible people that have horrible things to say, but generally they are horrible people that say horrible things to people for fun. And it's not actually personal. I've had my first troll on TikTok, and they asked me why I existed. And do you know what? It didn't bother me. I thought that was a really interesting existential question. And I did type out a quite facetious answer. And I thought, actually, no, I'm not going to engage with it, because they're not trying to have a conversation. They are trying to be a horrible person and have something horrible. And actually, I don't need to accept that into my world. I don't need to accept that into my psyche. Their opinion is of no value. And I think that's the thing for me. It's realising that I have a much thicker skin than I anticipated. Now, don't get me wrong. I would hate to say something or be misunderstood and that cause offence to somebody. But I think should that happen, I would be able to take responsibility for that and deal with it, hopefully in an appropriate and adult way. So it's kind of realising as I'm going through the process of doing the things that I'm doing, that if I make a mistake, it's okay.
So you've given yourself permission, really, haven't you? You've said, if I make an error, I'm giving myself permission for that, and that's absolutely okay with me. And I think that feels, again, to be really important, that we're able to be kind to ourselves in that way. I think it is about kindness, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So many of us are so hard on ourselves all of the time. And I think I talk a lot about that in this podcast, self-kindness and really taking care of ourselves, especially in the work that I know that you also do counselling work and hypnotherapy and all of those things. And, we do give a lot to be in this profession, don't we? I think if we go into a client session and we come out and we beat ourselves up for every wrong word we might have said, we probably would never get anywhere, and we probably wouldn't be useful to anybody anymore.
And exactly that, it mirrors my podcast experience, mirrors my working with client experience. It is that when you first qualify, that's the thing. Or for me, it was like, what if I say something that's really damaging? Or what if I do something that somehow causes more harm? Generally, there's not really much that we can say or do that we can't recover from, because we build that therapeutic relationship. And for me, part of the process is enabling your client to be able to go, hey, this wasn't okay for me, like to be able to have boundaries and have a voice. And if they can bring that into the therapeutic space with you, then for me, that means I'm doing my job well.
Yeah, and there it's a bonus thereon, isn't it? And actually what you were saying there reminded me of something that one of my tutors said to me when I was training. And I had that sense of, oh my gosh, I'm going to do major damage. I'm going to say something that's going to completely mess something up for somebody. The tutor said to me, you seem to think you've got a lot of power.
Yeah.
And it was a most challenging statement when he said that. And I sort of stopped, and as it sort of sunk in and as time went on, I thought, actually, you know what, you're completely right. It isn't, it's not that at all. I don't have that much power to do that. Yeah. And so that really, really helped me massively. And although it was such a challenging statement, it helped me immensely.
Yeah, and it's right. But I think we, as therapists, we have our journey as well. We have our personal journey. We have the things that we've experienced, and those voices that we've picked up along our journey can at times be quite loud. And make us think things that are untrue. And it's, like you say, supervision and tutors, all of those things, they're amazing tools for going, but really though, really, shall we just unpick that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And challenge it. Let's challenge that thought and, let's challenge what's been happening there. I guess challenge is a real crucial bit of what we're talking about, really, because I'm wondering how you have found fear in your life in terms of your career generally, and maybe in your personal life, if you're prepared to talk about that on air. What is it for you for fear? What's the thing that comes to you that you just think, it's just stopping me from doing whatever, X, Y, and Z?
I would say at this point of my journey, I don't allow fear to stop me from doing things. If I recognise that fear is the only reason that's holding me back, then that stroppy, stubborn teenage part of myself is like, no, I'm not having that. And I will unpick it. So for me, I do have a process. I was sharing this in my private group yesterday because we were talking about comfort zones there. And what I've realised is when I have that kind of feeling of, no, I don't want to do this, I question that and I ask, why don't I want to do this? Is it because I just don't want to do it? Or is there some fear going on underneath? And if it's fear, then I will say yes and work out how to get around that. And I'm lucky because of my training, because of my journey. I've got the hypnotherapy, I've got the tapping, I've got the meditation, I've got the breathing, I've got all of these tools that really help me navigate through the fear. It's a cliche saying, but feel the fear and do it anyway. I do believe in that. There's, if you're not putting yourself in a position of actual danger, or you're not doing something because somebody else has an expectation of you, if that fear is there, sometimes that's healthy. Our body doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. It's the same physiological response. I almost embrace it. It's like, okay, yeah, I am afraid, and that's okay. What am I afraid of? X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, like I said, what's the worst that can happen? X, Y, and Z. Am I okay with that? Yes, I'm okay with that. Let's do it. And that is almost quite a pretty fast process now.
Yeah, you said that in a really kind of very bullet pointed way. That feels like it was just, a very quick process for you to do that now and to recognise. And I think that that's the key, isn't it? It's about recognising how you're feeling, to say, I notice that I'm feeling this and I wonder why.
And that's not always been my experience. I am aware that there's been times in my life where I haven't done things because of fear. I haven't done things because of fear of other people's judgment, fear of how it will impact the relationships in my life, fear of being too much, fear of all of the messages that I'd picked up along my way that almost made me a smaller person. And I think I've got to a stage now where I'm blossoming again. I'm exploring what it is to be me and what it is that I want in the world, that I want to give into the world and I want to get from the world. And for me, the only place for fear is to be acknowledged, and I'm not going to allow it to hold me back. Got this whole world out there that we can expand into, however that looks for you. Fear is almost like a cage that we allow ourselves to be put into, and we have the key within us to unlock that door. If the door's even locked, we perceive it to be locked.
Oh, that's a really great analogy. And who puts you in a cage, do you think?
I think societal expectations, the people that you have perhaps journeyed with along your life that have been either not healthy relationships or not aligned relationships, or on a different journey to you and not in the same space as you, if that makes sense. Yeah, other people's expectations of what it is to be whatever it is that you want to be. Other people's fear. It's amazing. If you have goals and dreams and you tell somebody your goal and your dream, how often they'll be like, oh, but you can't do that. You can do that. They can't do it. It's a different thing.
Oh, that's such a good point. Yeah. As people, we always will be having to unpick fear, because I think it's going to be, I feel as if it's something that comes up so much for so many people, and it's continual at times, isn't it? And so I'm wondering whether it's a lifelong unpicking that we have to do.
Yeah, well, it's a survival instinct, isn't it? In the caveman days, that's how we stayed alive. Fear kept us alive. And it's a basic response, that fear, that fight, flight, freeze response. And I guess it's using tools to manage that into a space where you can recognize that, yeah, like my body's just telling me a lie right now. It's okay. Like I am not under threat. I'm not under threat. Yes, this is slightly uncomfortable, but I'm not physically in danger right now. And it's okay to do the thing that I want to do. So yeah, it's a lifelong, it's part of the human experience.
Yeah, for sure. And what you were saying then really kind of struck a chord with me about how many lies we tell ourselves all day long. We lie, don't we? And the thoughts become, they're not true. So often the thoughts are not true, but we choose to believe them. And I know that I've had lots of experience of that, both in my own life, but also with clients, that idea of asking. I often ask a client, is that true? Actually, what you just said, is that true? And the number of times that they sit and go, well, actually, no, it's not true. It's just incredible, but you don't clock it for yourself in a day-to-day, and I think that really breeds that fear factor.
Yeah, and especially, I'm really aware that some of my fear around talking out loud is I spent my entire school time being told I talked too much, being told, to be quiet. Every single school report ever says Sarah talks too much.
Yeah.
And I realised that was part of what was going on for me. I've also been told in the past that I'm too loud, that especially when I get excited about something and I talk really, really fast, and I do get really, really loud, and I get really, really excited about everything. And for people in my life in the past, that has been too much. And what I realise now is that I'm not too much. I'm just too much for them.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. It's kind of their problem and not your problem, if that makes sense.
But all of these things become a part of our own self-talk, and our mind absolutely loves to cling on to the negative and throw it at us at any time as a truth. And generally, it is an absolute lie. It is an absolute lie. And somebody else's experience of you doesn't have to be your experience of you.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, because people see everything through their own lens, don't they? So people are seeing you through their own lens and not through, you're seeing people through your lens. So you've got a dual kind of relationship going on. But it is about recognising for ourselves who we are and what we are to other people. When you start to do that and you go into a place of recognising, as you said, is to feel the fear and do it anyway. You recognise that you have fear. You might recognise that it comes from a place of people saying something to you in the past. As soon as you recognise it, you're then able to say, do you know what? I'm going to go and do it anyway. That feels great, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, listening to my very first podcast guesting was out yesterday, and listening to that last night, I had these kind of revelations of like the moments before it coming out, the days before, I kept having that anxiety in my stomach of like, oh, what have I said? Like, oh, how is it going to sound? Like, oh, I think I was really, really loud. And actually, like, I do listen. Some of my guests I know don't listen to themselves. I do listen to myself because I want to hear what I sounded like. And I listened back to it, and it's like, oh, I actually sound quite professional. I do sound like I know what I'm talking about. And really proud of myself and being able to give myself that positive affirmation. And I think that's so important to do. We as human beings will be quick to criticise ourselves and be quick to kind of pick up on the things that we did wrong. And part of my work with clients is very much about being kind to yourself and that self-talk and actually complimenting yourself, because it's so important to validate yourself and validate your experience and be able to do that for yourself and not always need other people to do that, because ultimately your opinion of you is valid and important.
Yeah, and I think if you wait for other people to validate you, you might be waiting a really long time before anybody notices that you need validating. And sometimes we can internalise that, can't we?
And it feeds into that need to people please. And ultimately, you need to be the one that's the happiest with the way that you're living your life and the way that you're showing up in the world and the things that you're doing and the things that you're putting out there. Being proud of yourself can often be seen, I think, especially for women. I mean, you get told, like, don't brag about who you are. Don't be too confident. Don't take up too much space. And I've got to a stage now where it's like, no, actually, there's nothing wrong with being confident. There's nothing wrong with being proud of your achievements. There's nothing wrong with sharing that out into the world. I used to struggle, and I still do to a degree, to advertise the things that I do. How are people supposed to know what I'm offering into the world if I'm not telling them? It's not magic. They can't just find me. People don't have to listen to me. People don't have to work with me. But if they're not aware that I exist, how can they find me?
I think when you were talking then, is what came up for me was this idea of, I talk a lot about this here, and it's about being good enough. And, it's such a difficult thing. And for people that are going into their training, or they're in the middle of their training, perhaps they're about to go on to placement, and they have a sense of not being good enough at this, or terrified that they're going to say the wrong thing, or terrified they're going to forget something crucial, and the fear is stopping them. What would be your advice to them, do you think?
Recognise that that's actually part of the journey, that as learners, we are supposed to go through a stage of thinking we know what we're doing and thinking we don't know how to do it. It's completely normal. Trust the process. You are being taught, you are going through supervision, you are going through your personal therapy journey. Trust that process and learn to tap in to your inner knowing.
Yeah, I love that inner knowing. That's a great way of putting it. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I would also add on, because I have listened to your podcast and I know that we've both had experiences where our learning wasn't exactly how we wanted it to be. And I would echo, speak up. Speak up and ask questions of your training providers, of your supervisors, as the people you're connected with. If things don't feel right in your learning process, challenge that, because you can only spread your wings as far as you are able to within the space that you're in. And if there's something kind of not okay with that, it's okay. Because again, bringing it back to clients, you want clients to be able to do that. So model the behaviour that you want your clients to be able to come away from your sessions with.
That's just the best way of putting it. And you're right, if you're feeling that something's limiting you, or you're not able to grow in the way that you think you should be able to, absolutely challenge it. You're paying good money to do your course. You absolutely have the right to do this. And it's such an important part of your life when you're training to do something like counselling or any other form of therapy. Spread your wings as far as you're allowed to. That feels really important, that you make space for that.
Yeah, and tutors are only human, and they've gone through their training experience, they've gone through their professional experience, and they may also have limiting beliefs as well. So don't allow, yes, we have to work ethically, yes, we have to work safely, yes, we have to work with boundaries. But if you've got a vision for your career and your training provider tells you that you can't do that, then look around and see what else there is, because as helping professionals, there's many ways that can look. And I know this is counsellors and we're going on a counselling journey, but like thinking about my stuff and the stuff that I wanted to do, like it's really important that if you've got a vision for how your practice is going to work, that you find and you tap into people that professionally can support you in that.
Yeah, because essentially, as I say a lot here, it's you working with clients, and it's the real you that you take into the room, isn't it, into the space. And if you're being moulded in some way, that's not the real you.
Yeah. And I remember I was doing, when I first started as a counsellor, and I was doing couples counselling, I was in my early 30s and I did look quite young for my age, and I would dress in a way that I thought a counsellor would dress. If people could see me now, I've got blue hair, I've got an undercut, I've got tattoos, I don't look like your stereotypical counsellor. But then actually, what is a stereotypical counsellor? It's like, you just reminded me that I really felt like I needed to look a certain way because of the fear that I wouldn't be counsellor-y enough.
Yeah, you'd be perceived in the wrong way. And actually, it's you to have blue hair, isn't it? It suits you. It is you.
Thank you.
And it feels important that you feel able to do that. And I think it's great, and it looks great. It's fantastic.
I just feel like I can't be working with clients and be like, hey, embrace all of who you are. Let's be your authentic self. Be unapologetically who you are. Be proud and, explore all of it is that makes you, and then be not showing up how I feel I want to be.
Yeah, and sitting in clothes that don't feel comfortable to you and don't feel like you. Absolutely, It goes completely against the grain, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what? It's been absolutely a privilege to speak to you today. You're so articulate and you've got so much kind of passion, and I love that. And I think you've done the most amazing job. So thank you for kind of feeling the fear and doing it anyway, because I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed speaking with you. I probably could talk to you for a few more hours as well.
Well, you can always come back, let me know.
Thank you.
Take good care of yourself, Sarah. Thanks again.
You take care.
Okay then, bye-bye. A big thank you to Sarah for joining me and sharing so much of herself. To find out more about her and her amazing work, please see the links in the show notes below. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's been great to have you with us. If you want to strike up a conversation or ask any questions, please do come and find me on Facebook. Details in the show notes below. Until next time, take care. See you soon.